Welcome to Future Media Explains, where I break down a story that will blow your mind. And today I'm going to talk to you about something wild. It's the story of the internet we almost had, a forgotten dream that was imagined decades ago, but it might just hold the key today to solving one of the biggest problems we have online. Okay, let's dive in. Think about this for a second. We've got these incredible AIs that are basically vacuuming up the entire sum of human knowledge from the web. And that's kicked up a massive, massive question. When an AI learns from your blog post, your Substack, your art, your newspaper, your video, who gets paid for that? But what if I told you that the answer to that super modern futuristic problem can't be solved by some new tech, but might be solved by an idea that someone had 60 years ago, way before the internet we know today was even a thing? And that gets us to the internet's big fundamental problem. It's the very thing that one visionary tried so hard to prevent all those years ago. A world where our collective knowledge gets scraped up with absolutely no payment or even credit going back to the people who created it in the first place. This is really the heart of it. Ideas are being ripped away from their creators. They get copied and pasted over and over again, losing all their original meaning. And the creators, more commonly than not, they get nothing, no credit, and definitely no compensation. It's a system that just doesn't value the act of creating things online. So to find a way out of this mess, we have to go back, way back. We need to talk about this guy, a philosopher and tech visionary named Ted Nelson, and his totally radical, almost mythical idea, Project Xanadu. Now, to really understand how far ahead of his time this guy was, look at this. He dreamed up his global docuverse in 1960. That's a full 9 years before two computers sent the first ever message on the ARPANET, and an incredible 29 years before the World Wide Web was even invented. And you know, Nelson has never ever been quiet about how he feels about that. To him, the web we use every single day isn't some great achievement. It's the cheap knockoff that replaced his far, far better idea. This quote says it all, really, doesn't it? So what was his grand vision anyway? Well, Xanadu was supposed to be this universal library where every single document was connected with permanent, unbreakable two-way links. You could actually see how ideas would connect to each other. But here's the killer feature. It had a system for micropayments built right in from the very beginning to automatically pay creators anytime their work was quoted or used. That was the dream. Let's talk about the web we actually got, because in Nelson's eyes, what Tim Berners-Lee built was just a stripped down, oversimplified shadow of what Xanadu was supposed to be. And you know that thing we click on 100 times a day, the hyperlink? Nelson absolutely hated that. He called them jump links, just a blind one-way leap into another document. And to him, it was like imitating paper, not inventing a whole new way for ideas to connect. It was a failure of imagination to him. And when you consider the two side by side, the difference is just staggering. Xanadu promised these two-way links that could never break, so you'd always have context and credit. The web we got, well, it gives us one-way links that break all the time. Think 404. And Xanadu had payments built in, whereas the web gave us free and paid for content and all the problems that are associated with that. Basically, Nelson's whole point was that we got it completely backward. He wanted computers to be organized like the human mind, messy, interconnected, associative. and instead we got a web that forces us to think like a computer with these rigid files and folders. He literally sees modern computing as a prison for our minds, like something out of the Matrix. Okay, so if Xanadu was so brilliant, why aren't we using it right now? Well, the answer simply is that it was an idea that showed up decades before the technology needed to actually build it existed. The web won because it was simple, maybe too simple, but it worked on the computers of the day, whereas Xanadu, on the other hand, was an absolute beast. It needed processing power, storage, and networking that was basically science fiction back then. And most importantly, there was just no way to make those tiny, frictionless micropayments that the whole system relied upon. Which brings us to this number, 402. What on earth does it mean? Well, get ready for this because it's a pretty wild piece of internet trivia. It's the HTTP status code 402 payment required. And what's so fascinating is that Tim Berners-Lee himself actually put this code into the web's original design. It was a direct shout out to Nelson's vision, but it was never used. Well, not until now. Because things have changed a lot. Which brings us back to our very first question. Has the technology finally caught up to Ted Nelson's 60-year-old dream? What's different now? Well, the answer is just about everything. In 2009, we got internet native money, and in 2014, we got stable dollars that live on blockchains. And in 2025, today, we're looking at blockchains that can handle tons of transactions almost instantly for next to nothing. All the pieces are finally here. The main thing, the main technical hurdle that stopped Xanadu dead in its tracks, the ability to do tiny, fast, cheap payments, has been solved. And the system of commerce that Nelson was dreaming about is now for the first time actually possible. The dream is alive. Which leaves us with the one last huge question. As we're trying to figure out these new problems like how to pay creators in the age of AI, is it possible to look back to that dream from 1960? Should we actually try to rebuild our digital world on this old, almost forgotten principle? Well, we're actually now starting to see this emerge. A few months ago, I and some others began to report on the work that the $70 billion cybersecurity giant Cloudflare is doing in dusting off 402 to make AIs pay. And just in the past couple of weeks, Microsoft has started quietly signing deals with major publishers to do the same pay-per-use model on the same protocols. It now has a name, pay-per-crawl. Whether this becomes the way that creators are paid for their contribution to the web is still to be seen. But I'll ask you this. If a 60-year-old idea is still animating the biggest brains at the largest companies in the world, then there must be something in it, don't you think?